Hi friends, I'm Day, your host, travel lover, deal finder, and storyteller. And this is Wander Every Day, the podcast where real talk meets real trips. Each week, I sit down with some of my favorite well-traveled friends to swap stories. We're diving in on where to stay, what to eat, how to spend your time and money, and how to enjoy exploring the world. Now, let's wander. Hi friends! Welcome back to Wander Every Day. Today on the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing my friend Diandra, who has lots of experience when it comes to group travel, so stay tuned for that. In 2017, Diandra, myself, and our group of friends all went to Cuba for an all-inclusive vacation that maybe didn't work out the way we wanted it to. To give you some background, my husband and I met in 2012 in Montreal going to Concordia University, and I quickly became integrated into his group of friends, and that's how I met Diandra. And in 2017, 2 years after Nick and I moved to Ontario, we decided to go on a group trip together to Varadero, Cuba. Now, Varadero, Cuba is known for its beaches and beautiful waters, but also has some inconsistent reviews in terms of the quality of its food. We had a friend that had decided on the resort we were going to, and although we had some hesitations, we all decided to go because we were going as a group together. Although we had the trip of a lifetime, half of our friends got sick, and Nick and I, who paid for the nicest room at a 4-star resort in Cuba, had cockroaches everywhere. Now, this isn't to say that hotels in Cuba can't be nice. Nick and I have stayed at a Malia chain hotel before and had a very good experience in Cuba. I also used to work for S-Trip, which was a student travel company, and I would take students who were going to the Caribbean for March break or for grad trips to Cuba as well. And I never actually had a bad experience there. But unfortunately, on our group trip with Diandra, we had a lot of people spending most of their time in the bathroom. We look back on the trip now as a really nice time as friends. We really enjoyed getting the time together, but perhaps we would reconsider that accommodation again. I will say one of the nice things about staying in Varadero is there is the downtown, which is walking distance, where they have lots of bars, restaurants, and it seems pretty safe considering most of the people around are tourists. So if you are going to Varadero, Cuba, I do recommend getting off the resort and walking into the town. We went to the Beatles bar and had a really nice time sitting around listening to live music. I'll also never forget when Nick and I met our friends at the airport who were flying from Montreal to Toronto and then connecting all of us together from Toronto to Varadero. Nick and I were at the gate waiting for our 10 friends who were on this flight from Montreal, and the gate was closing, and the gate attendants basically told us, you got to get on the plane, and we're leaving all your friends here. At essentially the exact same time, we saw all 10 of our friends sprinting towards us in the airport. We knew that their flight had arrived 20 minutes before, so we knew it was going to be tight, but we were under the impression they were going to be there a lot sooner. Turns out a few of them had stopped in the duty-free to pick up Wayne Gretzky wine, of all things, and it led to basically all of them almost missing the flight. Although the trip had its ups and downs, we still had a fantastic time, and I will remember our trip to Cuba with our friends for my lifetime. Now, it's time to listen to my interview with Diandra about her 10-day Contiki tour to Eastern Europe and Italy. We're kicking off today's episode of Wander Every Day with none other than my friend Diandra. Still known in our friend group as our dignified pub quiz trivia host, she is most renowned for living out her dream and winning Jeopardy not once, not twice, but 3 times. Aside from her love of her beautiful Westie chai, and her ability to quote every episode of The Simpsons in her sleep, Diandra has always had an eagerness to explore the world. Today, we will be reviewing Diandra's 10-day Contiki tour to Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Slovenia, and Italy, which she took in November and December last year. Diandra is not new to Contiki tours, having been on one to Ireland and Scotland in 2023, and Austria, England, Germany, Czechia, and the Netherlands in 2022. She has also traveled to Italy, and we once traveled together as a group to Cuba. Din, welcome to Wander Every Day.
Thank you for having me, Day. I'm really excited.
I'm actually excited because when I was prepping for interviewing you, I actually had completely forgotten that we'd traveled together. And today I was talking to Nick about it.
Right.
And he had forgotten too. So before we actually get started, I'm going to take a quick 1 minute to talk about Cuba because I don't know what your experience was like, but as much as I loved traveling on that trip with our friends, I actually think it was one of the worst trips I've ever been on as a trip. Have you done an all-inclusive vacation other than going to Cuba
Yes.
with us? Are there any thoughts or feelings that come to top of mind when you think about our trip to Cuba?
So I loved my little bungalow that I stayed in, but I know that you and Nick and anybody else who stayed in the hotel, actual hotel, didn't have a great time because, yeah, it was just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in the hotel. But the actual the excursion itself to Havana was really fun.
Yeah, like everyone got
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I enjoyed the trip like as a group, but yeah.
So, what has made you want to go on these Contiki tours in the first place?
So why I actually went on Contiki in the first place is that I've never actually traveled by myself before. My very first Contiki, I went with my cousin. And because I was like, okay, well, at least I'll go with someone that I not only know, but I also get along with fairly well. And I know that he had a great time on that trip too. And what I like about Contiki in particular is that everything is planned more or less in advance. So you know what you're getting into, your itinerary is planned, and also the accommodations, the transportation, the breakfast, and many activities, not all of them, but most are included in the price when you book the trip. So that, as a solo traveler, that really takes out the guesswork, which for someone, if you like to book and have most things organized for you in advance, Contiki is a great option.
Do you have the option to opt in or opt out of certain meals or excursions when you do a Contiki tour, or are you supposed to be doing everything that's planned? Is that all part of the cost?
So there are activities called free time add-ons, and these are activities that are optional, but they are an extra fee. And you can take them if you want. And I often encourage you to do most of them because a lot of them are like very authentic, fun experiences in those cities or towns that you can't really do anywhere else. So I would recommend those. But at the same time, if you don't want to, you don't have to. You don't feel forced to. There are some that are included that ideally you would take part in, but for whatever reason, if you can't, that's fine too.
Okay. Is there a particular reason you chose this itinerary for your Contiki tour that we're reviewing today?
Yes. So my latest one, I've been to Venice and Rome before, but every other city on the itinerary was new to me, and I've always wanted to see more of Central Europe. So, and I never traveled also in late fall or early winter in Europe before. I have been in October to Frankfurt, but I have not actually been to Europe in late November, early December, which was that time. So it's like right before like the holiday rush, but also at the time when there's a lot of Christmas markets, especially in Germany and Austria. So that was also very interesting to see.
It's funny you talk about that because my next question was, is there something special about traveling to Europe in the winter, especially in that pre-lead up to Christmas time? Because Europe is known for its Christmas market, so I'm sure that was integrated into your trip and maybe made it a bit different than traveling in the summer.
100%, yeah. And nor was this more obvious than Austria. So we were in Salzburg, and Salzburg is a very important city in Austria. But in terms of the Christmas markets, they really give it like an authentic sense of what the holiday season is like in that part of the world. Just the vibes, really, frankly, are just very Christmassy, very cozy. It's sort of rustic at the same time because you have all these like wooden booths and plenty of Christmas lights, trees. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the mulled wine, which is essential to drink, especially if you don't drink, then I mean there are also other alternatives. I know that when I was not feeling exactly like having a mulled wine, I would have I believe it was like a pear-based cocktail, but more of a mocktail because there was no alcohol in it, and that was delicious too. So it really is like the cozy wintry vibes that I think make it so special in that time of year.
On the day budget travel scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is absolute cheapest accommodations, street food, minimal to no paid activities, and 10 is absolute luxury, no budget, 4 seasons travel, where would you rate yourself as a traveler?
I would say Contiki, depending on which trip you do, could be anywhere between, I would say maybe like on the lower end. So if you really just stay in hostels for most of the time, it would be like maybe 2 to 3. And if you stay more like in my most recent Contiki where there's hotels included breakfast and like some like mid-tier activities, like in term mid to high tier in terms of pricing. I would say maybe like 5 or maybe 6. Definitely not. I would definitely not say it was like a scale of 10 because it was, I wouldn't say it was luxurious, but it was also, we were not roughing it in any sense of the word either. Of course, hostels, because it's like shared accommodations, there's also like more people in a room. I remember my very first Contiki was mostly hostels. We were 4 in a room and it was more bare bones. It wasn't really like a hotel room. Like you had your basic amenities. There was like a shared bathroom that we had and like our bunk beds. And we also had like food at the hostel, mostly breakfast. Occasionally, depending on our itinerary, we would also have dinner included. That would be more like affordable and cheaper. But anything that involves like a hotel or something that they call a special stay, which I haven't had the opportunity to, but it could be like, for example, if I did my Warsaw to Rome trip in the summer, there would be a special stay at a lodge in Austria. So that would increase the price.
Tell us about your general trip itinerary.
Okay, so I started off by flying into Warsaw and I flew from Montreal to Warsaw via Munich, and it was all Lufthansa. Lufthansa is a fantastic airline. It's the flag carrier for Germany. It took me about 7 hours from Montreal to Munich, and then maybe like an hour and a bit from Munich to Warsaw. It was like a hop and a skip in comparison. And so after that, I basically got to my hotel in Warsaw via taxi, and I would be meeting the rest of the group the next day. But I actually ended up meeting 2 people the night before, and I also met some other people, but I hung out with those 2 in particular. That first night in Warsaw, we kind of did our own thing because we hadn't met the group yet. And then the next day was when we set off on our journey, because we didn't really stay in Warsaw. Like we really just stayed overnight. And then we went to Krakow in Poland. And so I think we spent 2 days in Krakow. After that, we went to Budapest. Before we went to Budapest, it was a pretty busy day. We went from Krakow to Banská Bystrica in Slovakia for a few hours. So we didn't actually sleep there. We just went there for the afternoon. And then we went to Budapest. I believe we spent 2 days in Budapest. And then after that, we went on our way to Salzburg in Austria, and we stayed there for another 2 days. Then after Salzburg, we went to Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia, and we stayed there for a day. Then from Ljubljana, we went to Venice, stayed there for 1 day, and then we finished in Rome for a day as well. Now, something about Contiki trips as well, when I say like we started here, but we finished here, that was those of us who started in Warsaw and ended in Rome, because there were some people who joined all the way from London, and some people who left in Warsaw, some who like continued in Rome, some who joined in Rome when I left, and continued all the way to like different parts of Italy. For example, I believe they went to Florence, and also I believe they went to Sorrento, and then they also went to Paris and London. There's probably some other places I'm missing in that itinerary, like even Switzerland, I think they might have gone to, but this was all after I left. So those are often called modular trips, where people hop on, hop off at different points of the trip. So technically there were people who did a perfect loop from London to London. And that's like a month of traveling, which is pretty intense.
I know the first place you went in Poland was Warsaw. Tell us a little bit about Warsaw.
So Warsaw, I was there for like not even 24 hours. I think I got there like maybe in the early afternoon. And so by the time I got to my hotel, I kind of relaxed, I freshened up, and I happened to meet 2 of my fellow travelers who, like me started in Warsaw and then we're going to end it. I believe they both ended in Rome as well. Yeah, kind of like did our own thing. We kind of like explored around the area. We had pierogis, because when in Poland you should have pierogis. I would think most of your listeners know what pierogis are, but for the uninitiated, pierogis are basically dumplings. They can be sweet or savory. I have tried both. Absolutely delicious.
Wow.
And yeah, so really good. And it's like they put like all kinds of any meat you could think of, they put in there, or any sort of fruit they can put in a pierogi. Usually my experience blueberries, but I had like all kinds of meat, for example, like duck, chicken, beef. It was all Fantastic. So we visited the Palace of Culture and Science. It is it's like it's like a skyscraper from the Soviet Union days, and it's very tall, and we had spectacular views of Warsaw from the top, from near the top, if not the top of the building. Really, really beautiful views. And, I remember also that night it was raining, so welcome to Poland. It's raining, but at the same time, it was a nice night and like a nice intro to Poland. So after that was Krakow. And Krakow, we were there for 2 days. Yeah, we stayed in Krakow proper. So we did a walking tour of Krakow. That evening, we had a pierogi making class, which was super fun. So yeah, more pierogis. We also, like during the walking tour and every time we were in the main square of Krakow, on the top of every hour, which was like a really nice tradition that they do, there is, I believe it's called St. Mary's Basilica in Krakow, and there is a trumpeter that peeks out of like a little window at the very top, and he plays a little trumpet melody for about a minute. And he does this on the top of every hour. And so he goes through like every direction. So like north, south, east, and west. And so once he's done, like he'll do his little solo and then people will clap and then he'll wave. You can just like his little tiny hand poking from up on the tower. That was really nice to see and hear. And the food in Poland is spectacular and cheap. So cheap, and you eat really well. There were also like more like street foods, like there's these foods called pashki. It's basically a donut that's like round and very dense, and it has usually powdered sugar on top. But it's sort of like in the sense of like not in terms of taste or texture. You know how like beaver tails, you could just put like anything on top? That's pretty much what they do with the pashki, but traditionally it's basically a plain donut and then it's topped with icing sugar. Those were really, really nice to have like on a little night out. And another drink that I really enjoyed in Krakow that you should absolutely have, especially in colder weather, is cherry wine. And there's a Polish word for it, but I won't be able to pronounce it. It was so good, especially on a cold night, and it's best served warm. So tasty. I regret not buying a little bottle and bringing it home because it was really nice. And so day two, now I say this to anybody who visits Poland, it is a little more somber, and this was definitely the most like the heaviest part of the trip was the trip to Auschwitz. And so we basically went to go visit it the next day. And we were there for a few hours. And, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, Daytona, like what you learned about World War II and the Holocaust in high school or in university, but I had learned quite a bit about it in high school and university. And even at that, like I knew what happened there, but being there is something completely different. It's just even though it's 80 years since the camp was liberated, it's still, you just feel that heaviness when you're there. And it's a very somber reminder of what hate can do. Now, we were all kinds of different groups. Every group has a guided tour. So our tour was a Polish guide. He was Polish, but he spoke English to us. So we would go through to different areas of the camp. Now, Auschwitz had two different sections, from what I understand, and so we went to go see both. And so there were some parts that pretty much look the same as they did all those years ago, but then there are some that are retrofitted to be more of a museum. There are such like jarring exhibits, I guess you could say. And one that stood out for me was there are these rooms where you go and all you see behind glass is a bunch of, for example, in one you had suitcases. In another, you had prosthetic limbs. In another one, you had shoes. A whole bunch of all of these items stacked practically to the ceiling. And our guide mentioned to us that this is only about 1% of what we recovered. Not more, not less, because a lot of it was lost to history. And so, yeah, it was I think what got me. And also anything involving children, that especially was really tough. But it is an important part of history. It's an important part of Poland's history, of world history. So I would say to anyone who visits Poland, as heavy as it is definitely a must visit.
I've never been to a concentration camp, but Nick has been to Dachau and said it was definitely a once in a lifetime, unexplainable, incomparable experience that most travelers who really want to understand the culture of the countries they're traveling to should experience. In 2013, when Nick and I went to Berlin, we actually went to the Holocaust Memorial Site. It's an experience where you have a hard time finding the right adjective to describe your emotion. It definitely is a place of sadness, of grief. I experienced an emotion I've never experienced before, which was almost like this overwhelming feeling of darkness. It certainly was a place to reflect, to bring awareness.
Yes, I would say like in a weird way, poetic moment of our visit. We saw where the command, for those of you who have seen the movie The Zone of Interest, I have yet to see it. The movie basically portrays the camp commandant, basically the leader of Auschwitz. He actually, like in the movie, he is a real person. He actually existed, and he was executed for his crimes. His house, the house he lived in while the Holocaust was happening under his watch, and the gas chambers faced each other, and he was executed right in the middle. It was definitely heavy. It was 100% like nothing, even if you know about the history, you know about the Holocaust, you know about World War II in general, just the fact that it's still there and you can visit it, like it's because, well, it happened. It 100% happened.
Thank you, Diandra, for sharing your experience. I know sometimes this podcast can be beautiful and full of exciting things, but sometimes it is important to talk about the history and not be negligent in remembering some of the negative past about the places we visit to.
And it is a stark reminder of what we as humans have done to each other and hopefully never will again. But it's just something, not to get on my soapbox or anything, but that's it really is the end result of what happens when we dehumanize each other and dehumanize and hate each other. This is where it could go.
Tell me again about your accommodations. You said you were staying at the Ibis Hotel?
Yes. So most of my accommodations were the Ibis chain of hotels, which is based in France, but they have all over Europe. I know that I stayed in a couple in Scotland, and I stayed in the Ibis hotels in Warsaw, Krakow, Slovenia. And what's really nice about them is that they're very affordable. Just to give you an example, and I had to book my my room in Warsaw separately for the night before the trip actually started, and I met up with the rest of the group. And I think like with breakfast included, like 70 or 80 Canadian, which is really good.
For a hotel room?
Yeah, just for one night. And it was like,
That's
it wasn't a
very good.
motel. It was like a hotel with a small bathroom, but a decent bathroom, a comfy bed, a comfy like double bed. What's nice about Ibis is that it's like affordable, but you also get like all of the creature comforts. And the food is actually like pretty decent. It's like a breakfast buffet, and it's like a continental breakfast, coffee, tea, juice.
Think people get really nervous about booking accommodations in terms of cleanliness and reliability, especially if you're only paying that amount. If I saw a hotel that was only $70 a night, I would be suspicious,
Yeah.
to say the least. So it's nice to have actual recommendations for people, especially if people are looking to go to any of the places you went. That's very helpful.
For sure. Yeah. Depending on which one, they may not be like in the city center necessarily. So that is something to consider. Like you might need to take like public transportation to get to the city center or like have a bit of a walk, but it's worth it in my opinion. If you really want to save on accommodations, it is a good option.
I reached out to my Instagram followers about questions or recommendations for Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, Hungary. All of them had the same recommendation, which is that you need to go to Krakow. It's the most beautiful city in the world. And I was stunned by how many people said that because I've never even thought about going to Poland before. Do you think this trip changed your opinion of Poland or your perception of it as a travel destination?
In the sense of like it's a bit of a sleeper hit, honestly. Like talk about starting the trip on like with a bang. Like that was amazing. Krakow, I would go back, and I would also go to my next destination, which was Budapest. But if I would just like talk about Banská Bystrica for a little bit, it was a cute town in Slovakia. But going to 3 countries in less than 24 hours, pretty intense. We just walked around really, saw what was there. From what I remember, we didn't really have any activities planned or anything like that. It was really just to like sightsee, slash shop. I would collect magnets. Everyone, most people like to collect something or like a little souvenir when they go places, and that's mine. My fridge is starting
Mhm.
to fill up, and so that's what we did.
Is that a place where people would travel and stay overnight, or do you think it's a place where people should just kind of stop for the day to see it and move along?
Well, it's hard to say because I was only there for a few hours, but I mean, Slovakia is also, I feel, a country that is also slept on. I would argue that the Czech Republic, its neighbor and former co-country, like they were both together, they were both one country at one point, is more famous and more well known. But Slovakia is also like it's very charming in its own way and in its own right. So, well, I can't speak for like, for example, the capital Bratislava or other places in Slovakia because I haven't been there. Banská Bystrica would be a nice stopover. Let's say if you went from Krakow to Budapest, it would be a nice like halfway point between the two, in my opinion.
Did you do mostly bus travel between towns and cities, or was it
Yes,
train travel?
it was almost exclusively bus.
Okay.
It was, yeah. So our coach driver was fantastic. Both he and our trip manager, like or basically like our tour guide slash organizer, they're both Poles. It's like indispensable to have them with us, especially in Poland, because they knew like where to go. They were
Hmm.
like great like local guides in a way. Occasionally, we would have like to travel by tram or also like it was extra, but the gondola ride in Venice. That was more of like an activity. Yeah, for the most part, we traveled by bus.
Tell us then about your time in Budapest.
So Budapest was also one of my favorite places to visit. I think it was probably like the highlight of my trip, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
just because we were there for 2 days, but it was just really cool. And if you told me, okay, like what would be out of all the places you visited, which one would you go to like instantly right away again? Budapest, hands down. Like I would say Krakow is a close second, but Budapest is my number one for me. So much to see and do, and I felt like there was so much. We did so much, we saw so much, but I felt like I left wanting more because we only had 2 days. Like I would definitely travel, if not at that time of year, then another time of year because I can only imagine how much there is to do in spring and summertime. Because already there was so much to do in late fall, early winter. So that was also like another way that we got around in Budapest. It is extremely walkable and the metro is amazing. It reminded me very much of Montreal's in the
Mm.
sense that it's very easy to navigate. And there are also some parts of it that are actually quite old and it's like really charming to see depending on what line you are. Their stations have they're like smaller, like the older ones are smaller and they have like wooden doors that I'm sure were like renovated over the years, but it's nice to see that mix of old and new, especially because Hungary, like Poland, was a former communist country. So you do see like remnants of that in some places. And Budapest also, the cuisine is fantastic. Goulash, I had a horrible cold like at the beginning of my trip, and the goulash, it's considered their national dish. It's this really nice stew, this hearty soup or stew seasoned with paprika, was just what I needed to, clear my sinuses and warm me up. And they also have this like street food called langos, which is a flatbread that you top it with like sour cream and cheese and sometimes onions. And that was really filling. Like I didn't even finish mine. Also, they have forints. So forints is like their own currency. Same with Poland. They have the zloty. But yeah, that is to say, it was really fun. And one of the highlights of the trip as well, we had this beautiful cruise of the Danube River at night, and it was
That's
just so
amazing.
nice. That's also when I had goulash, and because it was a free time add-on, so we did have to pay for the cruise, but like the food and drinks on it were included. And you look at that and you just see the Hungarian parliament, which is like it's the biggest building in the country, and it is just like it's majestic, really. And especially at night, it's just like this beautiful like marvel of architecture. It's like well over 100 years old, and it looks phenomenal.
Feel like anytime I think of Budapest, I think of that Parliament building because that's in all the pictures of
Yeah,
Budapest.
yeah, and for
Yeah.
good reason. It's spectacular. I saw it in the daytime and also the nighttime, and it was just as beautiful any time of day, really. Another highlight in Budapest was at nighttime. We went to the skating rink, and it was a Saturday night, and it was popping. Like you had
Oh
like
my
all kinds
gosh.
of younger people, like older people, everyone in between. And it was really fun. And it was also really fun skating with Australians because some of them knew how to skate and some of them were on the ice for the very first time. So it was really
Hmm.
fun to watch and to do. And like for one of my friends who never really skated, we all kind of like helped bring her around and that was a really fun way to end Budapest because we next day, if I remember correctly, was when we headed off to our next destination, which was Salzburg.
So, just before we move on from Budapest, I
Yeah.
know they have quite the thermal springs, hot springs culture. Is
Yes.
that something you guys did, the hot baths at all?
Yeah, I would be remiss to mention if I didn't mention that. So I didn't have time. I didn't have time to, but a few of my fellow travelers did as well, and they had a great time. It is definitely something I would like to go to. I think it's called yeah, Hungarian phonetics are difficult. I think it's called the Szegeni Baths or something, and it's really, really nice from the pictures I've seen. But unfortunately, I didn't have time to go. But next time when I go back to Budapest, I'm going. Yeah.
The other thing I've heard about Budapest is the ruin bars.
Hmm.
Did you guys go to any of that while you were there?
Yeah, so again, that was like one thing that like some of us did, but I didn't because like some of us went to the ruin bars and then I was like, I want to go skating. So we went
Yeah,
skating.
yeah.
Like, well, some of us, yeah, we wanted to go, some of us wanted to go skating instead, so we went skating. Yeah.
It sounds like Hungarian food, as well as other places in Eastern Europe, is very heavy. And you went in
Yes.
the winter, so I can see how you would want a goulash and you'd want your flatbread. But
Yeah.
is there other options that are maybe a bit lighter? Or do you feel like most of the food there is just really hearty and that's just what you get when you're there?
So from what I remember of Hungarian cuisine, I would say that was the case. I can't remember if we must have had like salads and other things like that at the dinner on the cruise. But from what I understand, it's quite hearty.
Some of the pushback I hear about trips like this is that they're too fast and you're moving through places so quickly that you can't actually experience it. Where I like to think of it more that you get to experience a little taste. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit before when you talked about Budapest. Now you know you want to go back and you know it's somewhere you want to invest your travel time in the future, right?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
So after Budapest, you went to Salzburg. So tell us about your
Yes.
trip to Salzburg.
So Salzburg, we were there for 2 days as well. Salzburg is known for a few things. One, its Christmas markets. Two, the sound of music, because the Von Trapp family lived in and around Salzburg, from what I remember. And number three, it is the birthplace of the one, the only Mozart.
Hmm.
So that's what was really exciting for me as a classical music fan. And let me tell you, he is everywhere. He passed away over 200 years ago. Like, he is very much their native son. You can see the building he was born in. It's this beautiful yellow building. It's specifically zoned to always have a grocery store at the bottom. So you have like in German, Mozart's Geburtshaus, I think it's called, which is basically his birthplace. And then you have like Spar, the supermarket at the bottom floor.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And Salzburg itself is a beautiful town. I will say, in terms of things to do, there's not as much apart from the Christmas markets, which were really nice. I have to say, that's where I talked about the mulled wine and the pear like mocktail. Yeah, that's definite must to drink when you're at the Christmas markets. And they have really cute trinkets and stuff, like Christmas ornaments, stuff like that. That's something else that I try to collect when I go on my travels is a Christmas ornament. So I
Hmm.
did that in most places I visited. And another thing that we did in Salzburg was a walking tour. There were two different ones. So one with two different guides. So if you were more of a Sound of Music fan, there was a Sound of Music tour, and if you're more of a classical music fan, there's the Mozart tour. So I went on the Mozart tour. And so we learned a little bit about his life and his very prolific career. And another thing about Salzburg is that it is very walkable, but also there's buses, there's trams, very, very easy to get around. And it really is a town it's a city that is very much like a modern city, but in some ways it's frozen in time because of the architecture. It's definitely one of the more like I would say Krakow is beautiful, Budapest is beautiful, but Salzburg has that like classic beauty to it.
Hmm.
It really, and I think also the fact that you're in the mountains, It's quite scenic, really. There was I believe it was a palace we visited on our walking tour that was really nice. They had this like courtyard and garden in the middle, and even though it was like almost winter, it was still like a really beautiful place to visit. I believe it was before we reached Salzburg, there was this little town called Monsi that we went to. And so that's
In
like
Austria?
yes. And I believe
Okay.
it's like maybe half an hour, 45 minutes from Salzburg. And like if you think of like classic Austria, like in terms of what it looks like the ski lodges, the mountain town feeling, that's what it was very much like. And that was like a perfect for that time of year.
We were talking in the beginning of the podcast about how Hungary and Poland and Slovakia are all more inexpensive countries, but my
Yes.
perception is where Austria starts to become a bit more expensive. So, what is the cost difference between going to places like Budapest and then going to places like Salzburg?
I do wonder if the euro has something to do with it as well, because that was when we started to. Well, Slovakia also has the euro, but it's lower cost of living. But in terms of and in terms of cost, I did get the impression that Austria was a little more expensive.
You didn't talk at all about Austrian food. What kind of food did you eat while you were there? Did you do
Oh
street food? Do
yes,
they have street food?
if I'm not mistaken, I think that's more of a German thing, but I'm pretty sure they had pretzels like as a snack. I think I actually. I have a vague memory of having a pretzel in Salzburg. Yes. So yeah,
There you
that
go.
was
We're
yeah.
stimulating your mind.
Yeah, and it was a good one. Yeah, and again, like I was talking sweet and savory, they got both. So
There you
yeah,
go.
quite good, quite good. And so another thing that we had a traditional like there's a ribs and schnapps night. We went to like this farm that actually had not been doing well until they started getting visitors in and treating them to a night of ribs and schnapps. So that was really fun. There was a wide range of like think of all the different like schnapps alcohol you could have. They pretty much had it. They had ones that were more like grassy or a little more herbal, and then they had ones that they were a little more sweet. So definitely more up my alley. Like the raspberry schnapps was really good, and then also like the ribs to accompany that, or vice versa, was really good. It wasn't there that I bought it, but it was actually in the spar that is at the bottom of Mozart's birthplace. I bought a little like raspberry schnapps, and it was in the shape of a violin. It was so cute. It was like
Oh,
a
well, that's
cute
so
little gift.
nice.
That was like a really fun evening, and lots of schnapps were had. I'll leave it at that.
You talk about eating ribs. Are these like Texas style ribs? Like, how do
No,
Austrians eat ribs?
no. I mean, they're like it wasn't like slathered in sauce. It was like very much like fall off the bone and like juicy ribs. Yeah.
Yum. After Salzburg, you went to Ljubljana.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually excited to hear about Slovenia because a very close friend of mine is Slovenian and his parents are actually going to Slovenia this week. And they were
Nice.
talking to me all about it this weekend. So I'm excited to hear about your take on Slovenia. So tell me about Ljubljana and Lake Bled. That's how she said I'm supposed to pronounce it. Blade.
Blade. Okay. So, from what I understand, Lake Blade was not in our original itinerary, but it was like a surprise hit. We had the time and we were able to go see it. And I have to say, it was worth the hype. It's renowned as one of the most beautiful places in Europe. And even though we didn't have the best weather that day, I was expecting more sun. It was so gorgeous. It was really nice to visit. It really does look like a real life postcard is what it is. And so one of my friends and I, we actually like did a little hike like up a mountain in the area, and like you can have like spectacular views of the lake. And because in the middle of the lake there's this building, I forget what kind of building it is, but it's in the middle of the lake, and that's like it's often in pictures, you'll see it. Like we spent a few hours there before we got to Ljubljana. Like we only spent one night in Ljubljana, so we didn't have like 24 hours, but it was a really nice visit. I enjoyed it. Again, they had a Christmas market, so that was fun to see. I wish I could tell you more about Ljubljana, but because we didn't spend that much time in it, there's not much that I do remember, but those are like some of the highlights for sure. Like it was definitely a place that I enjoyed, but I think a couple of days, I think I would have benefited from like maybe an extra day in Ljubljana just to see what else was out there.
When you're traveling, are you mostly doing sit down meals? Are you doing planned sit down meals, or is it just based on timing you find a place with the group you're with?
Yeah, usually it's well, it's a mix of both. So one thing that was fun and like that I do remember, like one of the highlights besides Lake Blade was that night we had an evening of traditional Slovenian cuisine and dancing, and that was
Oh,
really
cool.
fun because they had like traditional dancers, and we like danced along with them. We like got out, like it was a fun way to digest our food. You know, we had like this like nice meal, and then we like burnt it off by dancing. So like we at one point we got out of the restaurant, we came back into the restaurant. Another fun story is that in Slovenia we sang karaoke at a bar, and being the lone Canadian, of course, I had to represent my country, and so I sang "Man, I Feel Like a Woman" by Shania Twain. Yeah,
Have to.
yeah, it was a blast. I sang along with my Australian friend. We had a great fun. We had a great time.
Okay, after Slovenia, you went to Italy.
Yes.
Back to the homeland.
Yeah, yeah. It was so I have been in Venice once before, and Rome I've been quite a few times. I think at least five. So I knew more or less what to expect. Now, because this was the tail end of the trip, we didn't have that much time in either city. Those who stayed after Rome had one more day in Rome, so they got to go see the Colosseum, and I think I had a pasta making class, if I'm not mistaken. But for myself, we really just had like a bit more of like a walking tour near the Trevi Fountain from what I remember, which at the time, if I remember correctly, was under renovations, but we still could see parts of it. So in Venice, we had a day there. So that was actually super fun. We made the most out of our day because we had a walking tour with a local. So we had like more, I would say it was like walking tour slash sort of pub crawl, but not really, because it was also like we were drinking but also eating. And so they have something called cicchetti. And the best way that I can explain it is sort of like it's sort of like Venetian tapas because you have these little like crostini with like all kinds of toppings, mostly savory this time. So like you had like I think my favorite was one bar that we went to, and it had like it had bacala, which is cod on it, and that was delicious. So good. And like we would wash down our cicchetti with mostly different types of wine, and that was really nice.
So we're
Um,
going to rephrase this as a cicchetti crawl.
yes, yeah,
Cicchetti and
exactly.
wine crawl.
Yeah, yeah, it was really nice. And later that afternoon, for those of us who were interested, we did the gondola rides, and I've been before. And yeah, that was also super fun.
Is there any other recommendations you have from Venice since you've been before? Is there any recommendations you'd make from past trips or whether that's food or activities?
Yes. So now because we were only there for one day and one night, like we didn't really get to choose, like we didn't have that much time to like choose our dinner because our dinner was not with everybody else. It was sort of like we were left to our own devices. And because we had limited time, we had to meet up for the coach and leave. The thing was that we like didn't have like a time to choose a restaurant. So unfortunately that was when we kind of got into the tourist trap part of things. My meal was fine. You know, it was like I
Okay.
had an octopus salad at a restaurant. I've had better, honestly. It's weird. Ironically, Italy was where I had like the not the best food of the whole
Hmm.
trip. And that was because of time constraints, and we had no choice really because we had like we were short on time. We really had to like go to like the nearest restaurant, even though it wasn't the best necessarily.
Hmm.
Same with Rome. Like we didn't have much time, so like that like one of my last like meals of the trip was so. But you know, I
Hmm.
mean, it wasn't terrible, but you know, I wish I had more time to choose like a restaurant that actually would have been like savored.
Is there anything you did in Rome other than go to the Trevi Fountain?
Yeah, I mean, besides like more touristy things like souvenir shopping, again, we didn't have that much time in Rome. We did visit the Spanish Steps as well. I have stayed in hotels near the Spanish Steps before, and it's a really nice area. So I would definitely recommend going there. It's really nice, and you're also not too far from. I didn't have time to do this, but you're also not too far from Via del Corso, which has like really good shopping.
Is there anything else about Venice or Rome? I know we covered them really briefly that you want
Yeah.
to talk about or mention.
There was this really nice bookstore in Venice that we went to. I think it was called Libreria Acqua Alta. It's really nice, and like you have like rare books, used books, new books. So that if you're a book lover, I would definitely recommend that library to visit. We just kind of stumbled
Hmm.
upon it, but that was a fun little place to see. And yeah, also, I mean, you can't really go wrong in terms with gelato, even in late fall, early winter. Like at every time of year, really, gelato is fantastic.
We didn't really talk about many personal stories that you had from the trip. Is there any like personal stories or funny stories that you want to share from your trip about you with your traveling friends or about yourself?
Well, I will say that I made like on every trip I do like you eventually do find your tribe. It is a little intimidating to be like one of the new people on the trip. But like I found that I got along with everybody. Like there were like it was inevitable. Like sometimes people like found their groups. Also because it's 18 to 35. Usually most Kentucky trips are 18 to 35. Some people tend to like group together if they're like in similar age brackets. But like go in with an open mind is my advice because like we can all learn something from each other really. um
Hmm.
and so I bet also like if age constraints are issues, because granted we are different people at 18 than we are in our like even our mid to late 20s, early 30s. Contiki also has an option for like for some trips where you can do 27 to 35, so people
Oh,
close to
okay.
the age. Yeah.
Did this trip change anything about how you see the world or yourself?
Well, I definitely would say that traveling alone in itself gave me a boost of confidence that I didn't know I had.
Mhm.
Because it is something that can be quite intimidating. You're traveling, you're meeting all these new people from around the world, people that you would have never met otherwise, especially because a lot of them come from Australia, which is completely on the opposite end of the world from us. Like it is Australian company, so like most people on the trip, especially like my latest one, almost everybody was from Australia or New Zealand. Except for me and another guy who was a person who was he was British, but apart from that, everybody else was from Australia and New Zealand. It really is nice to like to get to know people that you would have never, by sheer distance, you would have never known otherwise.
Yeah, of course. Do you have any advice to give to someone who would be planning the same trip or going on this specific Contiki tour?
So going with an open mind is what was one of them. And also a big one, it's not always easy, but make sure to get some sleep.
Hmm.
Like it's action packed and you spend a lot of time traveling on buses, and between cities. And many of us would nap or sleep on the coach to recoup from the previous night. Also be prepared in terms of like, and this is not to be a pessimist, but more realistic. You may actually get like it is a thing. It's called the Contiki cough because you're in close quarters on the bus in hotel rooms with all these people. And so inevitably, like, by one of the time I was there in Warsaw, the trip had already been started from London for like a week. So there were already people who were sick. So I had a particularly brutal cold when I was there for the first few days. Like I would say be prepared in terms of like bringing throat lozenges, plenty of Kleenex if you're going at this time of year because it's when the seasonal viruses are all around. So that's one thing to consider. And also for on the more fun side, for the free time add-ons, I've been mentioning them. I would say unless they really do not interest you, do them all. Like really make the most out of your trip. Yes, some of them are more expensive than others, but they are worth it. More often than not, they are totally worth it. And you get like an authentic taste of the place you're in. So for example, the pierogi making class, the river cruise, and the gondola ride were all free time add-ons. And those are some of the highlights of my trip. More often than not, it's totally worth it.
What's your next destination you're traveling to?
I have no idea, but I have been thinking of one other Contiki because I am going to be 33 soon and the cutoff is 35. I am thinking of going to Egypt and it would be the 27 to 35 age group in March 2026 if all goes well.
Egypt is a cool place that I would love to go to.
Me too,
I'd love to
bucket
go to
list for
both
sure.
places.
And the itinerary they have, and that's why I would definitely go to Contiki because Egypt as a solo traveler, especially as a woman, can be quite dangerous. So having like a planned itinerary would be like a really is probably your best bet.
Before we finish up here, we're going to play a game.
Mhm.
It's called This or That. It's quite simple. I'll give you two options, and you're going to tell me whether you prefer option one or option two.
Okay,
Are you ready? Pierogi or patchki?
it's tough. But in terms of what I would have, like more often than not, pierogi.
Travel in winter or travel in summer?
Summer.
Ljubljana Xmas Market or Salzburg Xmas Market?
Salzberg Access Market.
Venice or Rome?
Rome.
Bart or Lisa?
Why not both? But I would say, in terms of who I am more like, Lisa.
We did have a listener question, and we did talk about one country in specifically, so I feel like that might be the answer. But the listener question is, which country on the trip had the best wine or beer?
Well, in terms of wine, I'm not much of a beer drinker, so you can scratch that out. But in terms of wine, so I would say, well, the cherry wine in Poland, amazing. And then I would say also, well, I mean, I'm biased, but Italy has fantastic wine. And Austria too. Austria is a bit of a sleeper in terms of Italy, but they still have amazing wines.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Are there any comments you have, or is there anything else you want to share?
A few more little bits of advice. So always have cash on you. When I was in Slovakia, the magnet I bought was at a souvenir shop that was cash only. So luckily my friend spotted me. Otherwise I would have had to go to an ATM. And like, especially because we were short on time, like I was forever grateful for her. For her to help me in my quest to collect my magnets. And also another thing, it's more of like a travel tip in general. Wear comfy shoes. I had bought a new pair of Skechers specifically for this trip, and I still wear them today, and they are so comfy. And I'm so glad I got them because I barely had to break them in. They just were like I was like walking on a cloud throughout my trip, and that was fantastic.
It's perfect.
And B, especially in late fall, early winter, weather can be very unpredictable. So I had brought with me gloves and a scarf, but especially in Salzburg where it was the coldest, I should have brought a beanie. So thanks again to my friend. She lent me one of her beanies because she had actually quite a few with her. And so I wore that on the colder days. As it's better to have layers and remove them when you don't need them than, scrounging for them when you need them.
Does Contiki ever put their tours on sale? Is there an optimal time to buy them?
Well, I know that they have sales here and there. I believe I got this one on sale, but yeah, they often do. And also, which is very, very nice for repeat Contiki travelers, you get a discount. It's a modest one, but like 5% is better. A 5% discount is better than nothing. Contiki is a really nice way to experience and visit cities you never would have otherwise, and to meet people you never would have otherwise. One of my there's actually a friend of mine that I've made quite a few friends from Contiki, some in Canada, the United States, Australia, etc. that I still keep in touch with, including one who I met in Scotland who lives near me, and I never would have met her had I not gone on my Contiki to Scotland and Ireland. I would have never met her otherwise, and we still keep in touch to this day. It really is a great opportunity to meet people and visit places that you never thought you would have. And it's really nice to like open your keep an open mind and open your horizons and make really nice memories in the process.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Diandra, for being on the podcast. I'm sure you really help people who are considering a Contiki tour with their decisions. I mean, I've never considered a Contiki tour, and listening to you has made me consider going on a Contiki tour.
Oh,
now,
thank
the
you.
only issue, just as you, is I'm getting a little bit closer to that top end of the age bracket.
Yes.
But it sounds like a really great way to travel with new people, which is also a really great part of traveling, is when you get to meet new people in the process and see multiple places in a efficient way. We'll
exactly.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
So thank you for being on the podcast today, and I'm sure we will maybe see you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Daytona. This has been a blast.
I hope you enjoyed listening to my interview with Diandra about her 10-day Contiki trip to Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Slovenia, and Italy. For anyone who's looking to go on a Contiki tour or just a group trip in general, I hope Diandra gave you the information that you're looking for to help better guide you booking your next trip in the future. As always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Wander Every Day is also available on YouTube if you want to watch the video version of the podcast. And of course, follow us on social media at wander_every_day on TikTok and Instagram, where I'm going to post other recommendations and behind the scenes footage of our podcast recordings. Until next time, happy traveling.